we ready?
Yep, we're ready.
Ding, ding,
Let's
ding.
do somebody play our... There we go. Welcome to Aging with Down Syndrome. Here you will meet families who have cared for and assisted their loved ones to live their best lives. Through conversations, the Aging with Down Syndrome podcast will shine a spotlight on the efforts of families and professionals supporting individuals with Down syndrome through their senior years. Hi, we are thrilled that you have joined us on the very first episode of Aging with Down Syndrome. We are so excited to share with you topics that we believe are important to effectively support our loved ones with Down syndrome who are growing older. And we'd like to start with some introductions. I'm Jadene Ransdell, and I believe the most important thing for you to know about me is that I've been blessed to be called Mom by my now 51-year-old son with Down syndrome, who's named Matt. Matt came with multiple challenges, and it led to several diagnostic labels that made our lived experiences quite complex. His most recent diagnosis of Alzheimer's has helped me look at our lives through different lenses. There's a lot to know about the two of us, and my hope is that you'll join us regularly as we share our journey. Molly, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, I'm Molly O'Toole, and I'm here because of one of the greatest loves of my life, my Aunt Kathy. My mom and Kathy were sisters, and they had a special bond, which was passed on to us. That bond is probably one of the best gifts I inherited from my mom. So growing up, Kathy and I were always very, very close. An important thing to know about Kathy is that she was born in 1961. So she and my grandparents were pioneers at every stage. Aunt Kathy defied the odds and became very accomplished and independent. But as my grandparents got older, Kathy's siblings stepped in. For a long time, they carried the bulk of her care. And then maybe 15 or 16 years ago, I started to take a more active role. Eventually, I became her primary caregiver after she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. She came to live with me until she passed away earlier this year at 63. Obviously, there's more to our story than that, but I look forward to sharing it with you as the podcast goes on. So that's the high-level stuff. Kristin, what about you?
Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Kristin Daly, and like many of you, I wear a lot of different hats: wife, mom, sister, daughter, cousin, friend, volunteer, and advocate, just to name a few. But one of my very favorite hats is little sister. I'm the youngest of three, born in 1976 with my brothers Steve and Matthew just ahead of me. Steve is 1 year older, and Matthew, my late brother, was 5 years older and had Down syndrome. From the very beginning, Matthew was and still is the inspiration behind everything I do. Growing up with Matthew gave me the gift of seeing life through a different and I'd say better lens. He showed me what unconditional love truly looks like, how empathy, kindness, and compassion can shape a person, and how to find the joy in both the challenges and the simple, beautiful moments of life. And through him, I learned to celebrate every victory, big and small, and to remember what really matters. Be kind, just be kind. So in this podcast, I hope to share more about Matthew, my family, and our journey together. And I'll also be offering a personal perspective on what it's like to be a sibling and caregiver to someone aging with Down syndrome and Alzheimer's. My hope is that these stories foster education, awareness, and connection, encouraging a deeper understanding of the Down syndrome, aging, and Alzheimer's community. So with that, I'd like to pass it back to you, Jadene, and tell our listeners a little bit more about how we all came to be together doing this podcast.
All right. Well, both of you have put me in tears, so I'm going to do my best to talk about this. The path to get to where we are today, it's been kind of a long one. About 15 months ago, I just got this little message, this thought as I walked down the hallway, and I heard in my little head, you need to do a podcast. And of course, as I went to get my coffee, I was giggling because I knew nothing about doing a podcast. I'd listened to some, but I didn't have the first clue about what it takes to put a podcast together. So I did months and months of research, and I came up with what I thought would be some exciting topics. I reached out to friends in the Down syndrome community and actually had lined up some folks to be some guests on some of the episodes that I had planned to do. And then life got in the way, and I just could not push the start button. And then one day in the spring, I heard another little message, and it said, "You don't have to do this alone." And I went, phew, I'm so glad. And that's when I reached out to Molly. Molly's been an administrator for the Facebook support group that I started after Matt's premature Alzheimer's diagnosis. And she's always been so supportive and had such good and resourceful thoughts for the members in the group. And so I reached out to her and said, "You want to do this with me?" Now, Molly didn't say yes immediately. She was kind of hesitant, but before long she agreed. So, Molly, take it away. What happened after that?
You're right. I was excited about it, but a little scared. I mean, I had never done a podcast before. But one thing I was sure of, I felt and feel very called to share my experience with Aunt Kathy and the knowledge acquired to help others. I didn't know how I was going to do it or what it would look like. All I knew is that I didn't want that knowledge to die with Kathy. I wanted to find ways to pass that on and hopefully make it a little easier for those who come after. Because I remember being so hungry for information as we dealt with her aging issues and so frustrated by the lack of resources and information available at that time, and also how grateful I was when I did find that information. So when you asked me, Jadene, I thought about Kathy because she's always been a role model for me. Many things we take for granted did not come easy to her, but she did them anyway. She didn't have the luxury to say no to things that were hard or scary. And she may have struggled, but oh my gosh, was she an ace trier. She was always so brave and trusting, doing what was asked of her until the very end. And I want to be more like Aunt Kathy. So I said yes, and I'm so glad I did. I'm excited for this podcast and our listeners and our journey together. It's fueled by my love for Kathy and the Down syndrome community. Kristin, that brings us to you. Now, at the same time that Jadene reached out to me, you and I had connected, and you had mentioned that you wanted to do a podcast too. So, Kristin, this is when I'm going to hand it off to you so you can explain what brought you into this loop.
Sure. Thanks, Molly. Well, October 10th, 2023 is a date that will forever be etched in my heart. It's the day my brother Matthew left this earth and was called home to be with the Lord. After he died, I knew deep down that I wanted to do something meaningful to carry on his legacy. And I just didn't know what that looked like yet. About a year and a half ago, I was talking with my cousin John and some friends from the Down syndrome support group, and we were discussing how difficult it can be to find good information and support when caring for a loved one with Down syndrome who's also facing Alzheimer's. I mentioned that I wanted to help other families somehow to share what we'd learned along the way, but I just wasn't sure where to start or how to start. John suggested starting a podcast, and I actually laughed and said, "There's no way I could ever do that. I wouldn't even know where to begin." And later I mentioned the idea to Molly, not thinking much of it. But a few months after that, she called me and said that Jadene was interested in starting a podcast and wondered if I'd consider joining them. At first, I hesitated. I didn't know the first thing about podcasting, but then I thought about Matthew. He always took on challenges, tried new things, inspired others to do the same. That little nudge from him and from God was all I needed to say yes. So here we are today, the three of us, hoping to help other families walking the same path. Our goal is to share information we wish we'd had, to educate and encourage others, and to bring awareness and hope. Because caring for a loved one with Down syndrome, especially through the aging and Alzheimer's journey, can be hard, but it can also be a blessing. And it's a journey no one should have to walk alone. So here we are, the three of us. I hope you all understand a little bit more our why behind this and our passion behind this. And on that note, Jadene, I'm going to pass it back to you to wrap this up.
Kristin, listening to you and Molly, it's part of why I think this particular podcast is so important. First of all three of us do what we do because we have loved someone dearly who has Down syndrome, and they have inspired us and motivated us in ways that we probably would never have known had they not been part of our lives. And Molly, I want to say that, when you talked about you wished you had information and you looked for resources, and it was really a struggle, and that was one of the things that you wanted to do, was to help families not have to do the legwork that you've had to do. I can tell you that those are the kinds of stories I hear from so many of the families that I've connected with. I could connect with what you were saying. All three of us have really been so blessed to have this huge gift of loving someone who has Down syndrome. There's a stereotype about, I hope I can talk. There's a stereotype about how kids with Down syndrome are always so happy and loving, and that's not true. They're just like us. They have emotions and feelings, and they have good days and they have bad days. But I will say 100%, they are a gift to anyone who gets to share any time in their lives. I've been really fortunate in having an opportunity to do some exciting things because Matt got a premature diagnosis of Alzheimer's over 10 years ago. It's been quite a while now. And what I've learned is that there isn't a lot of information out there for families as we navigate these older years. It's why I created the Adult Summit. It's like there isn't much. When our kids hit 40, they're we're on our own trying to figure out how do we get through this forest and stuff. I've met a lot of families who have loved ones that are near Matt's age, and we all say the same thing. We feel like we've been left alone to figure out how to do what we need to do. I hear stories that are related to healthcare issues. I hear stories that are about government benefits and problems with that, residential issues, trying to figure out what is the best residence for my loved one, and just a need for more support in general. So I think at a time when people who are aging with Down syndrome, and they should be celebrating their lives and just experiencing so much love, that sometimes is overly complicated because their families are struggling with isolation and inadequacy and overwhelm and anger and guilt and even sometimes resentment. So it's my hope that the podcast will connect us with others and that together we're going to find the support that all of us deserve. It's our belief that we're stronger together, and we hope that you want to connect with us. I want to end this episode with a beautiful quotation that I found from one of my favorite authors, motivational speakers, and professors of special education, the late Dr. Leo Buscaglia. He wrote, "Too often we underestimate the power of a touch, a smile, a kind word, a listening ear, an honest compliment, or the smallest act of caring, all of which have the potential to turn a life around." It's our hope that you will see this podcast as a small act of caring. I know I can speak for Molly and Kristin and myself when I say that I hope every one of you have enjoyed this very first podcast from Aging with Down Syndrome. I do want to ask that you bear with us. We are not professional podcasters yet. Give us time, but we have a lot of lived experience between us, and we have some amazing guests that are in our lineup. So we really want you to join us again. And if you like the podcast, please share it with your friends and family. Let them know that they can listen to the podcast wherever their favorite podcasts are played. We'd also like to hear from you. We'd like to know if you like what we're doing. We'd like to know if you have any ideas for topics that maybe you'd like to see us discuss. So if you'd like to be in touch with us, do that through podcast@agingwithdownsyndrome.com. Again, that's podcast@agingwithdownsyndrome.com. And we hope that you'll join us on the very next episode. Thanks so much.